Alright guys, welcome back to the shop. Tonight we got a little bit different of a project. I got the lathe moved over here, and I decided to take it off that wall just because I wanted to have some shelves and kind of more centrally located in the garage. So, and I have a concrete wall behind it, so I can build a nice set of shelving to hold all the tooling, because I was noticing tooling and stuff and you know, micrometers, bits, live center, just pieces of stuff for the lathe were kind of accumulating everywhere, and I needed some places to set it. And also, the drill press is right over here, so it'd be kind of nice to also have a shelf to put a lot of my drill bits, because they kind of get scattered. They end up on the vertical bandsaw and whatnot. So I'm not going to film all of this, but I'll probably just kind of give a little, the gist of what I'm working on. That way, I don't know, just gives people some ideas. So, I scooted the lathe over. I have to pull it out so I can get back to behind it and work on it. But what I'm doing is I'm building some shelving. So I went over on the table saw at the wood shop and just ripped some 2x4s in half. So these are all 1 3/4 by 1.5 inches. And if you look over at my big shelves over there, at those shelves, I use full 2x4s because I have some heavier stuff over there, and I need to go through some junk's accumulated, so I need to go over there and kind of clean those off. But I have some heavier things that need to go on those shelves. And those are also, I believe those are 2 foot deep. So these ones over here are only going to be 1 foot deep, because I don't really need monster shelves, but for holding all these little parts, it's nice to have multiple shelves. So kind of the plan is to mount one shelf right in there, one shelf at this level, and then I'm going to have a shorter shelf down below, 2 shorter shelves down below. And I'm going to keep them relatively close together, because most of this tooling and stuff for the lathe and drill bits, they don't take up a lot of height. I just need surface area. So, and the shop's pretty full of projects and tools. So, yeah, let's get going. Okay, so over here I got a bunch of the wood I ripped, little pieces for in between, and some plywood. Not really set up to do woodworking over here, but cleared off a spot. So what I'm doing, I like to lay these out like you lay out a wall for anything else. So what I do is line up the ends. These are a 60-inch shelf, and when you're laying out a wall, typically you go 16 on center. So that way all of your drywall and plywood and whatnot always breaks on the studs. So you would go to 16, and then you come over 3/4 of an inch and make a mark, and then you put an X here to know that's where you put the stud, and then that 3/4 of an inch is half the width of the stud, so you know that if you come over 3/4 and you lay a stud in there and you line up the edge with this line, then 16 inches falls directly in the center of your stud, and you always land with your sheetrock or plywood or whatever right on the stud. But for these, it doesn't really matter, because I have full length sheets of plywood for these, since they're small shelves. So I can put these cross pieces wherever, and I just decided to do 5 for the 60-inch shelves. So I'm putting them on 15 inches on center. So I'm going to come over here and go to 15 3/4, make a mark. Come over here to 30 3/4, make a mark, and then over to 45 3/4, make a mark. And then you take the framing square, make sure they're lined up on the ends. Take your framing square, make a mark across both, come down to the next one, make a mark. Okay, so now when we lay these out, we know that we're going to have perfectly matched up cross pieces, and they're going to land 30 inches on center, 15, whatever. And like I said, for studs, you would go every 16, and then you come over 3/4, make a mark, line your edge up, and then get your 1.5 inch piece dead center every time. So that way all of your stuff lines up. So, and on these guys, they're so small they tend to want to split. So I pre-drill all the holes. It takes a little more time, but you don't have to worry as much about everything splitting up. So I'll come over here to the end. Pre-drill the end here. And the ends are especially important pre-drill because they're the most prone to wanting to split up. And I had a whole big bucket of 2.5 inch screws. So that's what I'm using for these, just kind of use them up because we don't really use them for anything. But normally you're going to want 3-inch screws because these, you don't have a ton that actually penetrates the next board. So anytime you work with 2x4s, you always want to use 3-inch screws. But again, these aren't holding a crazy amount of weight, and I countersink them a little extra anyways, so should be fine. It's laid out. This is a welcome change from the precision of metalworking to the precision of woodworking. So that one's still even split just a little because it was on the end, even with the pre-drill. So I'd like to get them started, then we can get them lined up. And I know it looks like there's a gap there, but that's because the board's routed on this side. This is a cut edge, so they're actually flush, but it looks like there's a little lip. Come over here to the other side. Drill these guys. Works, I guess. You want to start with the two ends first. That way you know you got everything kind of going square. Okay, now we got the ends in. Should be relatively square. Yep, pretty square. There's a little bit of a bow in this guy, but when we assemble the shelf, we can get a lot of that out, depending on how we attach to the wall and lock it down. Cross pieces in. And I know in some metalworking shops, guys like to not use wood because they're worried about flammability and whatnot. But I'm not like a for real serious fab shop. I'm just home shop. So I personally really like the wood shelves. I think they look clean and they're sturdy and they're pretty easy to make, and you can make them exactly the size you want. You're not ordering shelves and you have to cut them, and you don't have to do a bunch of welding and whatnot. So I think these are the best way to go. And if you have really heavy stuff, use full 2x4s, but for little shelves like this, 1.5" ripped down 2x4s saves you wood, saves a little bit of money, and plenty strong. So especially for 12-inch deep shelves. But yeah, I'll spare you guys the boredom of watching me assemble these, and I'll get back when I lay them out on the wall and start tacking them in. So, all right guys, so I got all the boxes made, ready to put these shelves up. I measured the center. It was 64 inches between the conduit, so I measured over 2 inches, held it up there, got one tap con in, and now that I got one in, I'm going to work my way across the back and work on getting this leveled up. So all I'm using is this is just a DeWalt hammer drill. You can use the bits that come with. I'm using these Tapcons, 3-inch Tapcons. They come with a concrete bit with a little piece of carbide in there. Well, probably carbide. And you can use those, but they take forever. And if you're going to drill any amount of holes in concrete, highly recommend a hammer drill. And you can also just chisel with these, just drill, but they are super nice. And I don't even pre-drill. This will just go right through the wood. So I just set it up there, get it lined up, drill right through, and then get a Tapcon in as quick as I can. So this would be a time to be nice to have another hand in the shop, but doing the best of my own. So. We're actually a little bit off on the level. I mean, it's still not even outside the lines, but that'll drive me nuts, so I'm going to reset this guy. see that, but pretty dang level to me. So, and they might be leaning a little in or out. Right now all I'm worried about is level this way. It looks like they're leaning down, but when I put the front pieces on, they connect all the shelves together. That's when I'll square all that up. But for now, I just want to get them up, all of them, and then I'll figure out where we're at, and then I'll cut the pieces that hold it together. And then on the bottom shelf, I'm going to put some diagonals down to hold it, or even some vertical legs. I got to see what it looks like. But yeah, and then I'll tie them all together, and then I'll put the sheeting on. I like to leave the sheeting off until I get them all up, just because it's easier to get in there to put the tap cons in. And the tap cons aren't exactly in the center because the drill doesn't fit between those small shelves, but it should be all right. Another thing I forgot to mention though was when you're building your shelves, a lot of the lumber you get will have has a cup in it, which is if you're looking at the board this way, this is the plane side, and then there would have been another plane side here. This is the long direction vertically. There'll be a cup this way, well either way, but it cups slightly. You always want to put the cup of your lumber this way that you're screwing into it. That way it sucks the cup down. Especially important for putting decking on, because decking, if you put the cup up, the edges of the board will bow up over time in the sun, and then you have lips in your deck to catch your toes on. So you always want to put those down, and then it screws down, and over time if it wants to cup, it has to cup into the joists. And then the other thing you want to look at is down the length of the board this way, there will be a crown. So most lumber will have like at least one crown where like usually the ends are low and the middle's kind of high, and it bows this way. And you always want to put the crown up. That way, if you have stuff, say that this was high and this was the crown, you have stuff sitting on your shelves, and over time it has to fight the grain of the wood to pull down. If you put it this way and the crown is down, then your shelf already has a natural tendency to sag. So in these shelves, these are so small it doesn't really matter. I didn't honestly worry about it, but if you have long shelves like those over there, if you have like 12-foot shelves, your 2x4s are going to have natural crown in them, and it's a lot more important for that. And then you kind of want to rack the board as you go along. So you tie in one side, and then you work down the board, either using a level or stretching a string to get a reference point, and then you anchor it in along the length, and then you use it as a lever at the end to lift it up and down to rack it, and then tie it in, and then that way you can work a lot. Like, it depends on the grade of your lumber, but a lot of lumber that comes from big box stores and stuff is going to have some serious wonk to it. So you can make nice straight shelves out of some crooked lumber. You just have to be cognizant of what you're working against and how you assemble it, and you can get some really nice shelves. So, and again, it doesn't really matter for these because they're so small, but for larger shelves and walls and other things you're building, it's a lot more that comes into play. So, all right, I'm going to get the next three up here, and then I'll come back when I'm assembling the legs and stuff and see how it all turns out. So, all right, so I got the shelves bolted into the wall. They're not level front to back, and those pieces on there are just kind of holding it in place while I was assembling it. They're all spaced 8.5 inches, and then there's going to be a 1/2 inch of sheeting, so there'll be 8 inches between each shelf. And I think that's a good size for all of this smaller tooling that I have. And right now I'm going to go to the bottom, and I'm going to cut some diagonals for support, and then from there I'm going to link all the shelves. I'll get the bottom shelf in, leveled up, perfect, and then I'll go up from there and then just put cross pieces up along the edges, and that'll hold everything solid. So there's lots of ways to cut these bottom pieces, but the way that I'm doing it, I think is just a fast way. I get it kind of no specific angle, just what I think looks good, and I'm just going to attach these on the inside, so that way I don't have to worry about the top cut. It'll just sit flush into the wall here. So I take the framing square, and I just line it up. I already made a mark, but I just line it up against the wall and then take a pencil, make a mark in there, and that is the angle that I want to cut off. And then it doesn't go all the way to the tip, so I'll just go over to the bench, come over an equal distance till it cuts the tip off, and then I'll cut these off, and then I can tap con them in the wall. And then up here I would just cut these off about flat and then screw them in, and you won't see them, so that cut really doesn't matter. And then I got to make a duplicate on that side, and then I'm also going to maybe make one more diagonal over here. We'll see how the motor sits back in this little cutout, so if the motor interferes with it I might not be able to, but we'll see. If not, it should be okay. I'll link these together and this will be linked together, so it should be okay, but we'll see. I'm going to cut that, make 2 of those, come back, fasten that on, and then I'll put the uprights on. Yeah, it's looking like a nice little set of shelves. Once I get them all squared up, they should be pretty nice. So I'm over here getting ready to cut. Normally I would just take this over the chop saw and set it at an angle and cut it. It'd be a lot easier, but I don't want to go all the way over to the wood shop. So I just brought a circular saw with me. I pre-cut everything, brought it over, but I knew I'd have to make these custom. So I just brought the circular saw, but it's a little tricky because the guard has to open up, and on these angles the guard tends to get stuck and not want to open. So you kind of have to come in with the guard open and drop it in, and it's a little tricky, but should be able to work. So he's cut. Somebody has been using the saw, they didn't shut it full depth. So. Okay. Try that again. Okay. Not perfect, but it'll work. So now I'm going to take this over and mark it where I need to cut it off. Now this was the very top, so I'm going to cut just inside of that. That way I have enough clearance for the sheeting. I'm left-handed, so it makes this a little trickier with the right-handed saw. Okay, I'm going to check the fit of this guy. Looks like it fits pretty nice. So I'm just going to make one more of these, and then we'll scoot the lathe over once we get these tied in. We'll see about putting one in the end there. So I cut on the other side of my line, so I have just below the surface there. These guys sit nice and flush. Okay. Concrete drill here. Suck that over a little bit. shoot. I was working, almost forgot to check the level of the shelf. Let's make sure that's level before we sink this in there. Alright, so we're actually a little bit high. So now we can go where we want her. Right about there is good. I already drilled this hole, but I'm going to see where that puts us. Because it wasn't very far off. Got that in. Let's check our level here. Take a look at the level. We're still a little bit high, but I've got a little bit of that where I can loosen that up and bring it up. So I'm gonna do that. Actually, you know what? That's like a 16th out of level, so you know what, I think I'm going to leave that one where it's at, because the enemy of good is better or something like that. Check the level on this side. Really need a shorter level for in here behind the lathe. Okay, we're dead nuts on this side. So I'll take that, I'll just send it in right where it's at. About dead on, so you can see wherever that sits real nice. In here. Get that nice and level. Another tap going. Okay. And these Tapcons, the shear rating, I don't know what it is for these ones, but they are, actually we can look at it here. So these are 1/4 inch anchors. They're about at least an inch and a quarter or more, maybe inch and a half into the block. So 581 pounds or 863 pounds of pull-out strength. In hollow block, it's slightly less, 357 and 468. And then the shear strength is, I don't know, 800 pounds or something. So, moral of the story, these anchors will stay in there way before the wood, or the wood will split way before these anchors come out. So that's why I'm only throwing in one. You could probably put another one in, but I'm more worried about splitting the wood than I am being sturdy, because these shelves are anchored in the back, and then now this one leg with that anchor, that'll be plenty solid. I mean, you could even climb on these and they'd still be solid. So one anchor and something like this is plenty fine. If you're really worried about your shelves and you're really putting heavy stuff on them, you could make, you know, metal brackets and put a piece of angle iron here and then bolt it down with 2 Tapcons, and then, but this ain't going anywhere. So, all right. So, let's take one last look, make sure we got everything nice and level. Pretty good. If anything, we're just a hair high, but I mean, that's a hair. And then across this whole shelf, we are pretty dead nuts. So I'll take that. Now I could potentially throw in another cross piece here, but I think with those 2 anchored in there and then these tying the whole thing together, I really don't think that that's going anywhere. So, all right, on to some uprights. All right, so I'm over here, I'm cutting these uprights. I always like to use a framing square when I have straight cuts with the circular saw. I use that as a guide, and it really helps get your cuts straight. That way, offhand, you can get a really nice straight cut without having to worry about getting the little wobbles. So I'm going to start with this corner, just because this should be nice and solid down here, and I'm going to get the corner square and then kind of work over. I don't know if it really matters, but. And I'm going to put the plain side out just so it looks right. And I left these a ½ inch longer than the top of this, because the top shelf I have a ½ inch of plywood, so that's why my holes are down a little lower. That way it'll sit hopefully nice and flush with the plywood on top. At the bottom of them first. Now I want to kind of work my way up. I don't want to put this, I'd like to put the top in, but then if it's all not square, our only reference is the bottom, because we know that it's solid. So we're going to work our way up to the next shelf. I held it level, made a mark on it. And now that I got a mark as a reference, set a screw in here. It's not good for the level. Okay, let's double check that we're square. Tad bit high. No, just a hair. Backed out that first screw. Pretty good. Alright, now that one's pretty good, we're going to go up to the next guy. This is sitting back a little. It's flush on the fronts down here, but this board's got a little bit of a bow in it. I know this hammer is seen better days, but you put a screw in the face and then you apply a little bit of pressure and you can get a crooked board to come right back out where it needs to be. There, for level. Pretty good. And that gets it nice and flush. Alright, so I got the cross pieces on. I noticed there was some flex at the end of the shelf over there, so I added a little, another leg there and then hooked it together. And I left a ½ inch sticking up so that way when the sheeting goes on it'll sit flush. So I'm going to throw the sheeting on now. Size. Yeah, they sit there pretty nice. And I didn't have enough plywood to rip that last shelf, but I'm going to get these ones done, and then I'll install that last shelf later. And to put these on, there's no reason to use coated fasteners indoors, so I'm just using some cheap drywall screws to put this down. So let me get this all screwed down, and we'll take a look at it, see how level it is once it's all put together, and start putting some tools on it. Alright, so I got the shelves all wrapped up. I still need one sheet of plywood, I'm 1 sheet short. But I threw some tools on there, just so I think it'll be super handy to have. This might not be how I keep it forever, but I just threw some stuff on there because I think it's going to be super nice to be working and have all the tooling I need right in front of me. So I can be on the lathe doing stuff, and then I can reach over, grab my micrometer, or grab my tooling, you know, grab a different piece of high speed. I think that I got to go through and clean and organize a lot of this stuff, but I think that that's going to be super nice, just having it right here. And I put the cutout in so the motor can sit kind of in this area, and also leaves clearance in case there's something larger. I guess on the chuck it can't really get bigger than that, but and I have some room here in case I'm using the steady rest like I was the other day. And yeah, I am super happy with that. I think that'll work really nice. So it'll help kind of get me organized, because I have starting out with the lathe, I've accumulated a lot of stuff, and it kind of just builds up on the bench tops. This gives me a lot more surface area to put all that stuff. So yeah, if anyone's building shelves in their shop, hope that's helpful. That's how I like to build little shelves. Like I said, for bigger shelves I'll use a full-on 2x4, but for little stuff like this, it's plenty. And I think it's really nice because you can build them to fit the spot. It's not like just buying metal racks and stuff that you have to, you know, kind of get in the way. So yeah. Well, hope you guys like that. Next up, I got to get moving on the chainsaw mill. I got to make some parts for it, bore out a sprocket, bore out some more bushings. I've been playing around, and I have this stainless stock that's been a bear to lathe, or run on the lathe, but I've been turning it down. I need to get these bored out, make some little bushings. I've got some oil impregnated bronze. I want to bore these out and then slip these in there, and then they'll hold some polished rods that connect to the chainsaw bar, so I can adjust the height and some other stuff like that. But hope you guys like seeing that. I was kind of a change up, doing some woodworking instead of metalworking. So yeah, super happy. Hopefully this helps me get organized and get some more stuff done.